I've had this dress for about 2 years now, and every time that I'm trying to get ready for work or do some errands, this is something that I easily throw on. This dress has a pretty close neckline, both on the front and the back, pretty much like a crew neck. I added pockets on both sides. It's got full sleeves with shirring details on the bodice front, back, as well as the sleeve section, and it hits at a midi length. One thing to note about this dress is that there's no additional forms of closure like a button or a zipper. I just used the stretch from the elastic after shirring to almost just wear it like a t-shirt. Today I'm going to break down the steps that went into the making of this piece. Starting from left to right, I'm using some brown paper and pen to map out my bodice measurements and use it as a template to cut out the dress panels. I'm also using a fabric pen, some regular thread, some elastic shirring thread, a measuring tape, some pins, and fabric shears. All of this is in addition to a sewing machine, of course. The first thing you want to keep in mind when you're approaching a project like this is to understand whether your fabric of choice lends itself to a project like this. And what I mean by that is this basically is going to be one big rectangle that's shirred, shrunk, and then you're going to cut out your pieces. The width of the fabric is what I was able to use as the length of the dress. With a pure cotton for my make, it's about a medium weight, I would say. You could totally go with linens, viscose, rayon, lightweight cotton, anything that would be just flattering, because you do want the gathers to form from the shirring, but you also want the dress to have enough of a drape from those gathers so that it just moves and doesn't stay stiff like mine. I was able to put together a little video detailing the stitch length, the tension settings, everything that went to help have a smooth shirring process. I'm going to link it over here if you want to check it out. First step to do is to take a measuring tape, such as this one, and measure it around the widest point of your body. For me, this was my hips, and I went ahead and took that measurement, multiplied that by 1.5, which gave me 60 inches, and add 2 inches, and that was going to be the entire width of my rectangle. The second measurement that I wanted to take was the length of the dress, and add 2 inches, one to the top and one to the bottom, so that I could do a double rolled hem and finish the garment when it was time for that. I cut out the fabric to match those measurements. Once you have that ready, the top section of your fabric is going to be the first step that you work on, which is you double roll the top and you draw a straight line from one end to the other end of the fabric. This is going to be the top from where you're going to start drawing your shirring lines in the next step. For shirring, you want to start by drawing as many rows as you desire. My dress has about 26 rows of shirring in the bodice section in the front and back, and they're all spaced 1 centimeter apart from each other. And each of those lines, you want to take a fabric marker and mark it on the good side of the fabric. At this stage, you should be ready for shirring, and I'm just going to wind as many bobbins as possible, more than I need almost, and I'm just getting all of them ready so that it's just a smooth and efficient process as I begin shirring. You are going to be using your regular thread on the top, your shirring elastic thread in the bobbin, and you're going to be feeding your fabric right side facing up into the sewing machine. And that's what's going to allow for the shirring to happen underneath as you continue this process. And so I'm starting off from one corner, going all the way in the rectangle to the other corner, and then turning it around so that I can just continue the shirring as long as the thread keeps going. You could also cut the thread after each row and start a new line, but I just feel like it's not an efficient use of thread, as a result of which this just seemed fine for me. And I just went ahead and kept changing my bobbin and going through all the rows, and I finished my 26 rows of shirring. And by the end of it, you should just have something that looks like this. Your rectangle, which started out as a proper rectangle, should now be shrunk where your rows are shirred, and it should just look like a trapezoid of sorts. In case you're not using a t-shirt and you are forming your bodice from scratch, I'm going to leave my measurements over here for you to interpret and go ahead with it. This stage is where you're going to cut out your front and back panels. This is going to be a pretty simple step. You can just take a t-shirt or a bodice that you have already measured out. Both your front and back bodice pieces are going to be exactly the same for this dress. So once I have this shirred rectangle, I fold it in half and cut it to prepare my dress panels. Now, With one of the rectangles, I'm folding it again and using my bodice pattern or a fitted tee as my template with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'm tracing the neckline, shoulder slope, armhole, and sides of the bodice to cut out the back panel. And because the back and the front panels are identical, I'm using this back panel that I just cut out on the other half of the cut rectangle to trace and cut out the front dress panel. Once you've cut this out, you should have two mirroring pieces which form the front and back panels of this dress, and they should look something like this. We have our front and back panels ready. We're just going to join them on the shoulder lines. So the way that we go about this is we place the right side of the back panel to the right side of the front panel. Basically what your dress would look like if it was turned inside out. And we're just going to join them along the shoulder points. And because this is already hemmed, you're not going to have to do anything more on your neckline if you choose to go with my method, which is to basically not have any extra forms of closure like a button or a zipper. And if you do feel the need to add them, now would be a good time to decide how you want to incorporate it, whether you want to cut it open in the back, add a bias tape or a button of some sort and neatly finish that off. At this stage, I'm ready to start forming my sleeves. And I'm going to take some fabric, and on that fabric, I'm going to lay out my dress that I've just formed. I'm going to lay it out flat, and it's going to look something like this. And I'm going to trace the entire section of the armhole on that fabric, and then I'm going to add 3 inches on either side of that measurement, so that when I cut out my sleeve, there's more than enough fabric for me to actually attach it. Because when you are attaching it around a curve, sometimes you might come across a situation where there's not exactly enough fabric, and because I don't like to run into those situations, this method seems to work great for me. For my sleeve length, I'm going to measure from the tip of my shoulder all the way to the end of my sleeve. That for me comes to about 19 inches. I'm just going to add another 1 inch to be able to do a double rolled hem. Just keep in mind that when you are shirring, expect it to kind of like pull up a little bit, so shirring has that effect where it'll just like kind of cinch everything and almost like shrink and come up. So if you do feel the need to add a little more, just extra length to make sure that that doesn't happen in your case, then feel free to do that. But yeah, just something that I've realized about shirring. Overall, you should be having the length of your sleeve as well as the armhole section of your sleeve ready. Now the width of the sleeve is just going to be as broad as it is. Just cut it out exactly as you see it. Just draw 2 straight lines from those marks that you have just traced out, and that should be good enough. Cut it out, and you can use this as a template to keep on a mirroring piece of fabric and cut out the second sleeve as well. And when you have your sleeve, just make sure to also make 2 notches, one where it is supposed to be the center point of your sleeve that matches the shoulder point, and the other one which is to indicate the front section of your sleeve. You could use a fabric marker to do this, you could do 2 notches like I'm doing, but essentially something to denote that it's supposed to match the front section of your dress. And so now you should have 2 sleeves, and as usual I'm starting off with doing a double rolled hem at the end of the sleeve, and once that's done, you're again going to draw the desired number of rows. For me that was 11 rows spaced 1 centimeter apart. You're going to draw those 11 rows of lines and start your shirring again like we did in the previous steps for the bodice. Time to join the sleeve to the dress. You're going to take the right side of the sleeve and you're going to face it towards the right side of the dress. You're going to pin the midpoint of the sleeve to the midpoint of the shoulder, exactly where the seam is, and from there you're going to connect it all the way to the front side of the armhole as well as the back side of the armhole, and just pin it in place. And then you can sew it completely all the way around it, and that's how you're going to finish making the sleeve. Now you will notice that the sleeve is still open from the bottom, which is completely fine. We'll take care of the pockets in the next step, and then we're going to finish the entire garment. For pockets, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to take my palm, keep it on a sheet of paper, trace around the entire palm with about 1 inch of allowance, and that's what's going to give it that ease to kind of like slip your hand in and pull it out, and also be able to put a phone or keys or something inside it. I'm going to add 1/2 inch of seam allowance to the entire thing in addition to the 1 inch ease that I've already added. I'm going to cut that out, and that's what's going to form the template for my pockets. You're going to make 4 such panels. Once you have that, you want to identify the point in your dress where you want your pockets to be. Mine are exactly beginning where the skirt section of this bodice is. I'm going to be attaching the right side of one of the pockets to the right side of the dress, and I'm just going to pin it in place, and I'm going to do the same thing for the back side as well. I'm going to show you how my pockets look so that it's easy for you to follow. But essentially, if the right side of this was facing the right side of this like that, that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to do the same for the back side as well. So that way, what's going to happen is when I do pull out the pockets like this, it's just going to be one seamless extension of fabric instead of seeing good and bad sides, which if you're okay with that, you can go ahead. But essentially, you're going to do the same for both sides and pin it in place. And now is where the grand step comes here, because you're almost done with this dress. And now once the dress is basically turned inside out and your pockets are still pinned in place, that's when I gather everything, and it's going to look something like this. You're going to have everything joined from the sleeve all the way under the arm, and then take it all the way to your pockets, go around the pockets, go along the skirt section on the end of the dress, and that's what's going to close one side of the dress. You can do the same for the other side as well, and you're almost done. You can do a fit check to make sure everything looks good at this stage, and as one of the last steps, all you want to do is double fold and hem the entire bottom section of the dress. If you want to maintain the quality of this garment, you just close up any raw edges using an overlocker, or you could also use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine like I do. I hope you have this in your wardrobe for many seasons to come and appreciate it the more you wear it.